Do you have an all-star HR team? You may feel your team is already performing at a high level, but let's take a closer look. Would your company's top leaders and employees agree that your HR team are operating at a high level? Are team members able to influence top executives on difficult topics? Are team members business and strategy focused on the challenges the organization is facing? Does the executive team trust your direct reports as advisors on human capital issues? If you can answer yes to these questions, you have built an outstanding team. If you feel there is room for improvement, Strategy Focused Group can create a custom development program to elevate the quality of your HR team. We use HCI certification programs as well as non-certified HRBP MBA Masterclass to give your team a laser focus on the business and strategy. Please email us at info@strategyfocusedgroup.com.
Good morning, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're in. If it's Friday, it's the CEO series where we bring together global leaders, entrepreneurs, major thought leaders from across the globe. And today we have as our guest Omer Glass, co-founder and CEO of GrowthSpace. Omer, welcome to the CEO series.
Thank you so much, Ron. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. Extensive background. Omer is the co-founder and CEO of GrowthSpace. Prior to co-founding GrowthSpace, he worked as a management consultant for Shaldor, one of Israel's leading management consultancy firms. And now he's an entrepreneur. So walk us through your focus from GrowthSpace.
So basically at GrowthSpace, we are an employee development platform. So we help organizations to develop their employees in the most efficient way. And the way it started and the way you can think about it is basically when you have your top talents or top executives, the way you develop them is usually to understand what they need and then find the best expert, like a coach or a mentor who can help them in the specific domain. And the way GrowthSpace started is basically enabling companies to scale that.
Okay.
So to basically offer one-on-one development and with technology, not making it accessible only for C-level or V-level executives, but to the whole organizations. So you can think of someone who needs to work on their communication skills, for example, or on the way they manage their calendar, they prioritize tasks, or something more connected to your day-to-day, like running agile sprint or project management or even sales, like prospecting, etc. Whatever it may be, a GrowthSpace platform can help you understand what you need to work on, find the right expert who can help you basically excel in your specific area of growth. And then we run development sprints. Most of them are one-on-one, but also we do it in groups in order to achieve this objective of eventually helping you grow.
So where did that idea come from? Because when you're an entrepreneur, the light bulb kind of goes off and says, you know what, let me explore that. I mean, your background, management consultant for a global firm, that's 50 plus hours a week.
More than 50 plus, but yeah.
I was trying to give benefit of the doubt. So I said 50 is a threshold. I almost said 40 and I caught myself. So
I would say it's like a 70 to 80 a week, but but it didn't come from there. Actually, the idea came from my partner and one of my co-founders and our COO. His name is Dan. And Dan worked for 200 employees, a company who was their COO. And a lot of people were leaving them. So this was back in 2018, right before the Great Resignation started. but a lot of people were leaving, and he tried to understand why. Why are they leaving the company? And it appeared that he did some exit interviews and some surveys, and it appeared that people were not feeling that the company
Yeah.
is investing enough in their development.
Yeah. Hmm.
So he tried to use whatever he could find in the market, like learning and development solutions, in order to solve this problem. So he spent a lot of money on various solutions,
Mm.
and then he tried to come back and see whether all the intervention he did led to an impact.
Okay.
And not only the results were not better, they were worse than they've been before. So he's like, I don't know what to do. And then he called me. He knew I had some experience in learning development, and he asked me, Omer, how do you create effective employee development? And my initial response was, no one really knows. And why no one really knows, that's the bigger question, is that it's when you have data, you know. Most functions in organizations are very data driven, like sales, marketing, customer
Yes.
success,
Yes.
everything,
Yeah.
every function.
Yeah.
And employee development is not. So usually you just try things and you
Hmm.
don't measure them properly, and you don't use data to make decisions. So we said, okay, so we can build something really interesting here. And that's how we started. Now we started with the one-on-one, like I just shared with you, because this is the hardest thing for organizations to scale.
Mm.
Think about it, like how hard is it to find one coach or one mentor
Yeah. Yeah.
for a senior executive? So
Yeah.
think about running hundreds or thousands of this. It's impossible.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's how we started. But everything we're building basically organizational capability that helps organizations to use data in order to manage their employee development and to connect the results of the development to business KPIs eventually.
It's interesting when you mentioned that about all the other functions of using data. And I tell people in human resources all the time, this gut feel thing, okay, that's fine up to a certain point. But what is the data? Do you have the evidence? Then is the evidence going to drive you to a solution in doing that? And I think based on what you just walked through that the story was kind of where that came from. You were taking more of a scientific kind of approach. Would that be correct?
Definitely. So I think the data comes in two aspects, or even three aspects. One is data on the experts. So a lot of employee development, think about it. What is employee development? You have like the on-demand self-paced side, like LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, Masterclass,
Mm-hmm.
etc., learning management system. And then you have a lot of humans involved in employee development, whether they're internal experts from within your organization or external. And no one really have robust data about the performance of these experts. So think about like bringing in someone to coach someone or someone for a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have real data about the performance in similar cases in similar organizations. So this is number one. Like we use data in order to basically help companies to choose the right
Yeah.
experts to work with.
Match. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is basically data about what works in other organizations. So eventually, a lot of companies run a lot of different programs. Some of them work, some of them do not work. But a lot of times you just try and fail and try and fail. And it's hard to use the wisdom of other organizations about what worked there.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the second level of data is benchmarking. And like with the growth space, you can not only design and create your programs, but also copy or steal from others who basically
Yeah.
got success in like specific programs.
Mm.
And number three, which is I think even the most important, is the like I always say, if you cannot A/B test it, do not buy it.
A/B tested. What is that?
Okay, so think about running like how, for example, in marketing. Let's talk about cold emails. When you
Okay.
send cold email,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do? You don't know really what will work,
Yeah.
but you try two different headlines and see what sticks. You try
Okay.
different colors for the button for the call to action button, and then you see if people react better to red or to green, whatever.
Okay.
So we take the same approach to the learning and development, and we say we're not coming with the truth, but we are building the tools that will enable you to get to the truth yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you can A/B test. Think about dividing your talent group into two and doing different things with each of them, each of the groups, and then stick with what works better for your organization.
Okay, so you could have say, a leadership development program, say -1 or whatever that would be, and you're building those, but that could possibly be different from the mid-level managers. And you kind of diagnose each category. Is that the way that works?
Yes, and not only that, you can even try and test. Let's say you have two ideas. You're saying, okay, I have, let's go for a leadership development program for mid levels. And then you say, okay, I can go with a workshop, 6 sessions, workshops of 2 hours, or I can add on top of the workshop one-on-one component eventually.
Okay.
And then you see what works better, and then you stick with it. Make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So there's the diagnostic piece goes throughout. So not only are you coming up with a solution, but you're testing that solution to see what's effective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So if a company were to reach out to your organization and say we're suffering turnover, you know, how would you begin the process of diagnosing that? Would you start with surveys, and after the initial meeting, what is the kind of process that GrowthSpace uses to, move forward once an organization contacts you?
So first of all, we understand what are your needs. Usually, our salespeople will ask you, "What's your objective for 2022?" Let's say I'm coming to you in the end of 2022. What are you trying to build? What metrics are you trying to drive? For example, organization can say, I want to drive the development metrics in my culture amp for my talent population. This can be number one. Another organization can come and say, I want to have more DEI promotions, for example. So a lot of organizations have different needs and different objectives for the year. Usually they know that. And then basically we, according to the specific objective, we help them to design programs combining various elements of basically a trainer-led development, like one-on-one coaching, one-on-one mentoring, one-on-one training, group sessions, etc., in order to drive the most impact for like your specific objective. So it's basically top down, and then we tailor and customize the program and the flow to fit your organization and needs.
Okay. Because I noticed here in doing some research, 1,000 mentors, coaching trainers, 300 competencies, 40 languages across the globe. That's a lot of offerings. So I switch it on the corporate side. I may know there's 1 or 2 leadership competencies. How do you figure out from 300 and for a bespoke solution, so it's kind of a custom fit? Because my organization could be different than the organization of here, a prior client or whatever it is.
Of course. So
that?
I think you're talking about the one-on-one offering right now. So let's focus on that for a second.
Okay.
Now, you're right. All our platform is based on taxonomy of skills, basically. So it starts with like the high levels of like management, leadership, communications, but then within each one, there are different things among management domain that you can work on.
Yeah.
For example, matrix management, delegation, people management, being a better coach for your people, DI management, etc. So basically it's like a menu of skills.
Okay.
Now, from the other hand, basically, you just mentioned we have over 1,000 experts. Each one of them is specializing on different things, right? It's not like one size fits all, but some people are very good in helping others become great leaders.
Yeah.
Some of them can help you become better salesperson, for
Mm-hmm.
example.
Mm-hmm.
So each one of the experts is connected to a specific skill, basically.
Okay.
And then this is all they will do on our platform.
Okay.
And then basically the platform, after tagging them, they're matching them according to people who need their specific specialization. And then the platform measures the impact achieved on the specific skill,
Okay.
right? And then you do it enough times. So what I'm trying to say is you have a lot of different experts who fit a lot of different skills, no matter what company you're in. Because okay, so if for you you don't want to, your organization is not a metrics organization, so good. So do not work on that. Work on delegation or
Mm-hmm.
communication or something else.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if I'm going through, say, a coaching program from manager to coach, something along those lines, and you've aligned me with someone, the back end mechanism, is there a way that we could test the effectiveness of that? If this is a 6 week or 6 month assignment or whatever it is, how do you measure as to how effective the solution you design?
That's a great question. So um, basically, there are two ways to measure it, or three ways. Some organizations will measure a participation rate,
Okay.
okay, for learning and development. This that basically doesn't say anything.
Nothing.
The better thing would be okay. So to ask you, how was your program? Was it good?
Yeah.
But the problem again, it's biased. Like
Yes.
my mother is a librarian and she just had an IT training, and
Yes.
she said, "Oh, it was terrible. It was like awful. I was so bored." But then they gave her surveys, and she gave the person a 10 out of 10 rating because
Okay.
let him have it. Well, why do I care? I don't want to
Yeah.
harm their career, right?
Yeah. He
So
was
again,
engaging. He was
self-reporting is
smiling.
biased. So the tool that we developed in order to create less biased reporting is basically involving the direct manager into the process. So think
Okay.
about like before the program starts, the direct manager with the participant, they define what is the objective for the development sprint. And then the participant is going through the development sprint. And after the sprint is over, the platform will come back not only to the participant, because again, the reporting will may be
Yeah.
biased there, but with the
Yeah.
direct manager, and ask the direct manager if the objective has been achieved. Now, if
Okay.
the manager will say, okay, there has been some communication problem there, like your communication style was toxic or you were not receptive to feedback
Mm.
or whatever, and then I see actual change in behavior, then I know that impact has been achieved.
Okay. So that's kind of a triangle. So you have your company that's working with the manager, but as a, I don't want to say a buffer, but you also have that direct leader involved,
Yes.
in that process. Okay. Okay, cool. So there's so much discussion today about the great resignation. People are leaving. So if I look back at the conversation we've had and the research I've done, so we could kind of tamp down resignations if we get more involved with employee development. Is that a possible solution for maybe someone is listening in and they realize that the numbers keep going up and everything they try, it's not solving that, not flatlining, not here. What do we do there? I mean,
So there are different approaches to basically cope with resignation. I think eventually, and specifically, if you're talking about millennials or Y generation, Gen Z generation, etc., people, people care about their salary. People care about benefits, but I
yeah,
think people care the most about their growth.
yeah,
So, and again, this is my approach, but I think that if you support people with their growth, with their development, and if they have like meaningful development experience, like they're actually becoming better professionals and better human beings
hmm,
throughout their experience within your company, the odds that they will leave you are lower.
Okay.
Now, it's not only that. There are many factors about like the interest of what you do in your direct manager,
Yeah.
etc. But I think development is one of the key components. It's not the only one, but it's a key component in retaining your talent. Because if your company is very focused on their development, and think about it, like let's go to the for the extreme for a second. Let's say as a CEO, you really feel in charge that part of your job is to develop the people that are getting into your company. I think less people will leave you because all of your company will be very focused on development and eventually helping people grow.
Okay.
So I think this is one of the best tools you can apply in a company, like to develop your people being very focused on their development.
Well, according to Gallup, that is number. There's three. There's bad manager, number one, and the other one that comes up with that is career development. I'm not being nobody's being invested in me. I'm just kind of doing my job. So if we were to open that up and connect, we can solve that. But let's go to the other part of that. It's bad managers, and then a lot of organizations, everybody know these are bad managers, but maybe they feel they don't need to be developed. That success syndrome. I've been successful over a period of time. I know I'm good at what I do, and somebody needs to tap me on the shoulder and say, "No, you're not." Out of
Definitely.
control. Out
I
of control.
think, but I
Go
think
ahead.
it's the same thing because
Yeah.
you need to develop your managers and not only the individual contributors.
Yeah. Okay.
So you need to help your managers become better managers in the most effective way. Of course,
Mm.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah. That manager piece. So there was a book that was written a couple of years ago that Gallup did. It's the managers. So you need to go ahead and take a look at that segment, because that kind of creates the culture inside of organization. So we hear great resignation, we hear upskilling, we talk about new skills, and we have all these things facing us, but maybe my budget is not what it should be for me to carry out two or three initiatives. What advice would you give for someone whose resignations are trending upwards, engagement levels are trending downward? Where do we start?
So I think you start with the managers
Okay.
and the role of the manager, and this is important. Let's talk about so we kind of agree that development is one of the most important things that can increase engagement and reduce attrition eventually. But who's in charge of development of your employees? Let's say you're a manager. Let's say you're leading a team of 5 employees. I believe that the manager in charge is in charge of the development.
Okay.
So I think that focusing on the manager and enabling the manager in developing their employees. So this would be basically number one. And number two, you talked about this before, is to focus a lot about culture.
Yeah.
And culture is one of the key components in organizations that eventually make people stay or go.
Yeah.
Because sometimes companies build such a strong culture that people just do not want to go away from the culture,
That's right.
or vice versa, like toxic cultures. So if the culture is good and if the managers are good, so you build like good fundamentals to basically increase engagement and lower attrition.
Yeah. So the book basically said the same thing. You create the culture with the people you have in charge that's managing people. So I saw a quote, not a quote, but someone kind of posted something in one of the HR groups, and they were saying that a lot of people were using fake doctor's appointments or whatever it was, and calling out sick, in other words, lying to say I need a day off. And they were asking the group as to how could I punish. And I'm thinking, you're approaching this the wrong way. You created a culture that caused people to have to lie, first of all, to say, I need a day off. So I think you should examine the culture first before you look into, I'm going to write you up, the old HR kind of one size fits all. I'll write you up and put it in your folder. Who cares? I mean, people are going to leave. So talk to that for a minute, because when we we culture is not. I don't think culture is is diagnosed enough in an organization. You create a culture, and people will respond to that culture. Bad habits could come about, bad managers, and all these things could come about. So, is there anything that your organization offers that we can kind of test to see what a culture is, or some insights as to how we design a solution if your culture is bad?
Yeah, so our business is not doing a diagnosis for culture.
Okay,
Like this is there are other tools, and I
okay.
think there are some HR analytics tools like Cultrump, for example, and this is exactly what Cultrump is doing, right? They ask people how good is the management and
Hmm.
how inclusive the environment, etc. So there are a lot of great tools to help you understand basically the situation you're dealing with.
Hmm.
Our role and basically where growth space fits in is right after that, because
Okay.
let's say your diagnosis shows that okay, your managers are not managing in an inclusive way, for example. This is something that can arise. So great, then you can basically connect managers with an expert who will help them to go from A to B
Mm. Okay.
in the organizational level.
Okay. So let's talk about business case because C-suite.
Sure.
They look how much is it going to cost. So can you? I would always say because I've been consulting too. When they go to the cost, I said, can we discuss it first before we get to cost? Just calm down, and we'll get to that point. How do we make the business case for learning and development, specifically today? Because if you think of a workforce and an industry could be transitioning, that's a lot of spend. How do we make a business case for to that so-called C-suite that's going to approve this money to do what we need to do? How do we make the business case for that? Or is there a business case? Well, I know we know there's a business case. Yeah.
Of course. So I think the core, like basically your question is kind of pointing a big problem that we have in the learning development industry. When you're having a hard time to justify the impact that you're creating, so you're in trouble. So it means that you're not doing something right, right?
Okay.
For example, lead generation. No one needs a business case for lead generation.
Yeah. Right.
It's like you created the lead, you didn't create. How much was the cost per lead? It's
Yeah.
connected to the business.
Yeah.
So the more data driven you are in your decision making, and the more you're connected to the business case, and the business case, in order to connect to the business case, the programs shouldn't be driven only from HR to the employees in the end, but it should be connected with their managers, because the managers, everything that the manager care about is eventually their KPIs, their OKR, their MOBs, etc. And if you build development tools that serve these managers and serve their KPIs, then you have a good use case and a good proof that what you're doing is contributing to the business.
Mm. I love your approach as you talk about evidence based because as I speak to leaders as well as you, are you quantifying that? Are you able to quantify what that success looks like? And what's the cadence? Is it are you pulsing it monthly? And the analogy I always use, which is kind of simple, if you think of finance at the end of the month they close. Here's where we are. Here's where we need to be. We're off target. So take that same approach, put it into learning and development. Take that same approach and put it into to human resources and guiding an organization to become more efficient. But lots of times you're kind of talking over the head of, one young lady told me, she said, well, I went into HR because I didn't want to do numbers. I didn't want to be involved in that. I wanted to just do the HR side. I said, no, it is about the numbers, the efficiencies of what you do. Can you
And by
give
the
us?
way, you see more and more organizations that
Yeah.
hire ex MBA graduates
Yes.
from Harvard and like Ivy League schools into HR because of that, because this world is going through transition.
Yes.
So if you are in HR, like this is the best time ever to
Yeah.
start being data driven and
Yeah.
numbers driven and
Yeah.
results driven It's not about basically the age of just doing things
yeah,
without having the like scientific
yeah,
approach, the scientific methods to
mm,
prove that you're doing something right
yeah,
and to improve
yeah,
and to show the data about the impact that you created on the business. And these days are gone now. I think the management will not have tolerance for things that are not numeric and data driven.
exactly, exactly. I had a conversation the other week with someone concerning the employee experience, and they were looking for like an overall score. I said, but you have so many segments. You have the recruiting process. What is the efficiency number on that? What kind of score do you get from that? And then they come on onboarding. What was the onboarding score? And I said, no, we don't really. We just test engagement once a year. I said, forget about that. That's over with. It's over with
Definitely.
because we have to test in segments. Or if you look at my concept is a toll gate, the registration side for applying for a job, and then you hire. What was that like? And you look at every piece that ties up the entire process. Is that am I on to something there, or am I talking crazy talk?
No, no, no. This is definitely what you're going to do. And by the way, if you talk about recruitment or talent acquisition, it's now being managed like marketing
Yeah.
because you're running campaign with a campaign spend and you have a funnel of candidates, how many people applied for your job, and then
Mm-hmm.
how many went through each part
Yeah.
of the funnel, etc. That eventually you can have a very, very good sense of the cost of hiring,
Yeah.
right? It's exactly like marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
every piece of the organization, as well as learning and development, will become that way.
Mm.
And that's the beauty. Eventually, when you need to think about learning and development programs, you need to think about how am I proving like the value that I'm bringing to the business.
Mm-hmm.
B, how am I A/B testing? How am I eventually getting to the truth, like marketing? And see how do I use data in order to back my case, like you
Mm.
just said.
Yeah. So someone mentioned to me said, I said, why did you choose HR? And I said, no, because I love people. I said, that was years ago.
No, no, no. But again, you cannot. This is important. You have to be people person in order to
Mm-hmm.
work in HR.
Mm-hmm.
You need, and it's right for any like in order to be a manager, you need to be a people
Yeah.
person, but especially in HR because you need to be able to build trust. You need to be able, to understand people.
Mm-hmm.
This, like, I think it comes together basically.
Yeah.
Empathy and science, or empathy and data, are both, I think, equally important for the HR profession. So it's not just having like like a science people like
Yeah.
math or physics. It's
Yeah.
not only
Yeah.
that you need
Yeah.
to have the human element. This is
Yeah.
super crucial,
Yeah.
but you need to go much more towards the scientific approach in order
Yeah.
to manage HR
Yeah.
in today's environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's cool. That's cool. You mentioned in one of your speeches I've read someplace, you talked about human-led development. I said, oh, I love that phrase, human-led development. So give. What is human-led development? First of all, walk us through that.
So human-led development is basically, I think the industry calls it trainer-led development.
Okay.
And in employee development or learning and development, you have things, some learning that's happening just on your time, learning online, learning from pre-recorded content, etc. And then the bigger chunk is basically led by humans. Now,
Okay.
who are these humans? Some of the humans are humans within your organization. For example, you're running a mentoring program. So your VPs will work with your directors on specific things. And it can be also external human vendors or trainers who
Mm-hmm.
will basically provide coaching, who will provide training, who will provide management workshops, communication workshops, leadership workshops, lectures, group coaching. All of this is basically driven by humans because, again, today, the most effective development way or the most effective way to basically exchange knowledge and exchange best practices is by humans to humans in a live synchronic ways, like we do right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, human-led development. So, if you go back to the organization, and we're trying to select the next level of leaders. So, based on the technical side, and then we talk about the empathy side, the competencies you just mentioned. Can you give us your thoughts on selection criteria? I mean, I can always make the best accountant I have as the accounting manager, but I come in on Monday, that's a different skill set managing 7 other accountants as opposed to doing the subject matter work.
Definitely. So as you go up the ladder, and when you think about your leadership, it's more about soft skills
Yeah.
than like technical skills.
Hmm.
Because eventually, as a manager, I'm like, I don't need to be, as a CEO, I don't need to be the best salesperson, the best marketer, the best engineer, the best product manager. I need to be the best manager and the best leader eventually. So I need to be able to inspire people to get a sense of direction, to help them and empower them to do whatever they do better. This is
Okay.
your job as a manager. So I would definitely focus on the soft skills in the manager or leadership roles.
Okay. Um, just kind of based on the work you're doing, what is the major competency, say post COVID, that's kind of bubble up, or I know it's changed. I know it's transitioned from pre-COVID to this more of the soft side. What do you see as the major competency? You list 300 pieces of expertise, 300 competency. What do you see as the top 3 competencies for leaders in the new realm of work post, if there ever is a such thing called post COVID?
Yeah. So first of all, management, because when you work in a remote or even hybrid
Yeah.
dynamics, so the management has changed. You're not meeting your people day to day in the office. You're managing in the remote, and you need to continue creating effective work in totally different environment. So remote management basically would be what. Number 2 is communications, because again, when we lose the face-to-face element and the group elements of gathering in an office, so eventually all the communication changed. So this will definitely be number 2. And I think number 3 is all the domains about like client management. So think about client interfacing roles where we used to do sales or customer support on site, face to face, and now you're basically transitioned to online.
Yeah.
And still, the fundamentals should be there. In order to buy something, you need to build a trust with someone, you need to
Yeah.
have a good process, etc. So all this client management domain has
Mm.
seen a significant shift and also significant demand in basically leveling up these skills.
Okay, cool. Let's take a break, and we're going to share your commercial again, and then we'll come back and pick up on the discussion.
Awesome.
Welcome to the Future Innovation Summit.
Your firm has a stable of you mentioned 1,000 mentors, coaches, and trainers. How do I decide which one do? I just need a trainer, or do I need a coach, or maybe I need a mentor? I understand people in our business, we understand the difference between the two, but maybe someone is new in the learning and development, and they have one tool, and that tool is always I bring a trainer in. How would I decide whether maybe this is not a training piece, but maybe it's a coaching approach?
I would claim that you don't need to choose upfront.
Okay.
And the answer will be based on the specific skill you're trying to achieve, based on the objective you're trying to achieve. Now, the way it works, and again, all of our system is built on a skill taxonomy or like skill menu of 100 different topics you can work on. And then different types of experts, some of them are coaches, some of them are mentors, some of them are trainers, can help you achieve a specific thing. For example, usually coaches, like ICF certified coaches, will be very good with topics like leadership, for example. Most of the coaches learn really how to develop other people's leadership skills, for example. So then if you want to work on your leadership style, you will work with a coach. Let's say you want to present better or work on your storytelling skills. There are some great trainers who specialize in storytelling, for example. And let's say now you're in sales and you want to close more deals and you want to get more best practices from a professional like you that has been there before, coming from sales just some years down the line. So then you will basically work with a sales mentor, which is essentially someone coming from your domain who can provide best practice exchange. So basically what I'm trying to say here, it's never one size fits all. It's never matching someone. No one needs a coach, no one needs a trainer, no one needs a mentor. But some people need to work on their leadership, some people need to work on their sales, and some people need to work on their storytelling.
So depending upon the context of what they're trying to achieve. How did you amass 1,000 of these people from across the globe, 40 languages, 50 countries? So you can pretty much cover the globe as it relates to that. What is your filtering process for someone that wants to become a coach or maybe move from trainer to coach or whatever it would be, to mentor? How did you build up that stable of people, and what filtering do you use? I don't want to say hire people, but what filter do you use to bring someone in to trust them with your clients?
Yeah. So everything is data driven, like I said. And our approach is, and in general, the ability to predict, for example, a lot of companies hire employees, and some of these employees are not a good fit, although they went through a very rigorous training and onboarding and recruiting, interviewing process. So, but when do you know that someone is good? Is after they did the work, right? And after they achieve their KPI. So this is the same. So first of all, we have an onboarding process and an interview process. By the way, the interviews are led by our experts. So our experts, let's say Ron is our number one expert in leadership. So there is a good probability that Ron will interview new experts that want to basically focus and work on leadership in GrowthSpace platform. So we have these screening methodologies, which are good, but the real source of truth is the data. Because once you're onboarded to our platform, then you will be measured not by me and not by the people, the person you're working with, but by their direct managers. And the question that the platform will ask the direct managers is whether impact has been achieved according to the objective that was defined.
Did it work? Did it work or did it not work?
Exactly. And if it worked, you will get a lot of work in the GrowthSpace platform. And if it didn't work, eventually you will not feel like you will be out.
Okay. Can you share a success story from one of your clients, if you can think of anything offhand? Not to put you on the spot, but a client that you've gone into and things were in disarray and you were able to move them to a different level. Anything comes to mind?
Sure. So one of our customers, Nasdaq company, 2,000 employees. I will not mention their
Okay,
specific
that's
name, of
cool.
course,
Yeah.
but a US-based company. Uh, Basically, they're measuring their KPIs based on culture, which is like a survey. I talked about culture before. And when they started working with us, they said that they care about two metrics in their talent population. Like talent are their top performers, and they saw that they achieved like the number one metrics that they wanted to drive in this year was the development metric, which means do the people feel that the company is investing in their development? Okay, this is what they try to achieve. And they wanted to drive this metric. They were like 2 points below benchmark. So that the benchmark was 70, they were 68, like their score among the talent population. And they wanted to get it above benchmark. So what they did is dividing the talent population into two and gave half of them growth space, basically. So half of them worked
Okay.
one-on-one with an expert.
Yeah.
And then they saw basically the change between the test group and the group like that
Right.
got growth space and the
Control
group
group
that
and then the
didn't.
others. Yeah. Yeah.
And the difference was 11 points. So for the intervention group, the group that got growth space, they went up from basically 68 to 79 points. So this is one good,
Yeah.
basically story, customer story of how a customer used a very scientific approach in
Mm-hmm.
order to prove that impact has been achieved according to what they need. Some other cases, it can be around like helping salespeople sell more, whatever it may be, but every customer have their own metrics and own
Okay.
objectives.
Okay. So from working for a major consulting firm, we had a group that all they did was design. They designed survey design. Um, so I'm in a company. I'm head of learning and development. Do I just kind of put some questions together and try to get a sense of it? Do I need to bring in growth space to kind of help me do that, or do I do something initially before, and I realize that I got problems and then call you in? How would you guide someone who possibly would want to use that approach internally, but maybe I don't have the skill set to design a? I can always ask questions, but what's the professional approach to that?
So usually the learning and development professionals we're working with, usually they know what they want to achieve
Okay.
from my perspective. So usually they will come to us and tell us, okay, especially in larger companies, like in smaller like SMBs, we're like working usually with 200, 250 to Fortune 100s. But usually they're learning and development specialists. Oops, my lighting got off. Sorry.
That's okay.
Um,
You still look good.
Thank you. So my basically they usually come with some objective and KPI in mind,
Okay. Okay.
and then we basically tailor what we do in order to help them. But you're asking me what happens if they do not know what they want to work on,
Yeah.
and then I will say maybe you go for like a consultancy like you worked for and try to understand what you need,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. To
Yeah.
diagnose that. As we begin to close out, another you have some good terms that you use, phrases that you use, and one of the other ones that caught my attention was the beginner's mindset. I'm like, oh, okay. What is the beginner's mindset? What does it mean for the worker? What does it mean for the organization if it's tied into that context?
So, beginner's mindset, I think it's a Japanese phrase or a
Okay.
quote. And it's basically saying that you need to know less and ask more, basically, or not to be knowledgeable about everything, but like be open minded
Yeah.
and ask questions and think everything twice instead of like having more answers. And now I think beginner's mindset is one of like the most important traits now for leaders, because the world is changing, and
Yes.
it's changing a lot, and it's changing fast, and you need to adapt very fast. You need to adapt to remote environment and to COVID, and then the work is moving so fast. So if you're rigid on your mindset, if you're not flexible, if you're not agile, if you're not asking questions, if you're not consulting people, if you know that what should be done, I think you're in trouble.
I was laughing when you said that because I did a session this past week with a group out of Asia, and we got to talking about leaders. And as you were talking through that scenario of the mindset, I thought of the smartest guy in the room. So you never know, you get in the room with people, and there's one person, they know everything. The smartest guy in the room syndrome. Okay, lose that, be more humble, and you ask questions, and it's a learning process for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when so I call you and I said, I got a couple executives here. They're the smartest guy in the room. How do we fix that? What approach would we use to fix that? Is that a training course, or is that a coach, or is that a mentor? How do we make the selection as to depending upon the need of, and the example I used was the smartest guy in the room. I've always got all the solutions, and I can.
So I think it's very individual, and in order to understand what you like, what the smartest person in the room needs to work on, whatever it may be, I think it's a good discussion, and usually the discussion will be good to have with your manager. So it's either a peer or manager. Like when I'm starting to work, and all of our employees are getting development sprints with our own product, basically. And whenever I'm starting to work on something new for me, I will usually consult someone I'm working with. So it can be one of my partners, it can be a board member, but together we will try to understand what is the skill and what is my objective, or what is my area for growth. And then we will like hone on something, some objective, which is very specific and attainable. And then according to the objective, it will be again connected to a specific skill in our taxonomy. And according to the skill, I will be matched with an expert.
Amir, thank you so. Where are you located today? Are you in Israel, or
I am now in Israel, yeah.
you're in Israel now? So thank you so much. What time is it there now?
And now it's 5 p.m.
5 p.m. Okay, so you're 2 hours behind Dubai. That's because it's 7 there. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for making the time to get with us and talk through everything on the approach and your company. How can someone? What is your website address?
It's growthspace.com.
Okay, cool. So hold on for a second as we close out, and we'll come back.